Welcome back to Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, still on the road. Hope to be back at the home studio soon, but glad to have been updating you throughout the week at America's Talking Network and also at thecentersquare.com. So be sure to get the podcast where you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus and you'll find it. But you can also get the headlines in your inbox at thecentersquare.com. A couple of quick segments for you. We're going to talk about the possibility of reciprocity for concealed carry with the incoming Trump administration and a Republican-controlled Congress, and what that could mean for Illinois and for gun owners. So stay tuned for that. But also, next, we got to tackle a statement from Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul about the Laken-Riley Act. So that's on the way here with Illinois in Focus Daily. The murder of a young nursing student at the hands of an illegal immigrant is the impetus of the Laken-Riley Act. It wasn't just a major political issue in the 2024 election, but it's turned into federal legislation that's passed the U.S. House and is now in the U.S. Senate. But some people coming out opposing that, claiming due process issues. Welcome back. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, and Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul, a Democrat, has joined with others in a letter penned by New York Attorney General Letitia James, saying that the U.S. Senate should oppose the Laken-Riley Act. Now, this act essentially would say that if somebody who's here as an illegal immigrant is accused of things like robbery, well, then they can be held indefinitely and then ultimately deported. This all stems from the murder of Laken-Riley, where an illegal immigrant in this country illegally was actually apprehended for robbery, but was later released. And then the murder of Laken happened, and that individual is ultimately convicted of that crime. While the U.S. House passed the Laken-Riley Act under Republican control, I believe all Illinois Democrat Congress members voted against that. But now it's in the U.S. Senate, and you've got Democrats coming out to oppose it in the U.S. Senate, which is now controlled by Republicans. Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul, he posted this letter last night saying that this proposal has clear due process issues and a high potential for abuse. It would severely strain our nation's already overburdened immigration system and make law enforcement officers' jobs more difficult by potentially fracturing trust with the communities they serve. Raoul said that he stands with other states' attorney generals to essentially oppose this measure in the Senate, urging the Senate to reject the legislation. So Raoul, interesting here that he supported a recent measure out of Illinois that gun rights advocates had opposed because they say it did away with individuals' due process rights when they're facing orders of protection. That was Corina's bill. That measure passed the General Assembly in the lame duck session, essentially would say that if somebody is the subject of an order of protection, then their firearms are to be confiscated by law enforcement. But gun rights advocates said that that does away with due process rights, as the individual as the subject of the order of protection doesn't have a hearing in front of their accuser with evidence presented before a final determination is made to take away those firearms. So clearly interesting to see here the due process issues. Let's take a look here at Letitia James's letter opposing the Laken-Riley Act, saying that we are especially concerned about how this law could be weaponized by domestic abusers. In domestic violence situations, it's common that the perpetrator makes false accusations of property theft against their victim, resulting in arrest of both people after an abuse incident. Even if charges against the victim are not pursued, Immigration Customs Enforcement would be required to jail the victim if they lacked immigration status. The threat of ICE detention would become another tool of control in domestic violence situations and will certainly deter victims from coming forward. So an interesting kind of double standard here that we're seeing when it comes to the issue of due process in the Laken-Riley Act, but then look at the Corina's bill that passed concerning firearm confiscation and gun rights advocates saying that the Karina's bill does away with due process. Now, this issue came up recently. Josh Hawley, a U.S. Senator from Missouri, he questioned a Democrat witness about statements they had made about migrant crime and the association with the Laken Riley Act.
Wrote, the murder of a nursing student in Georgia has a lot of people on the right talking about migrant crime like it's an actual issue. That'd be Laken Riley you were talking about?
Laken Riley was an unusual case.
Yeah, here, let's have a look. Here's Laken Riley.
Yes.
Her murder, her horrific murder at the hands of this illegal migrant who was also unlawfully paroled in the United States. Her death, not an actual issue?
It's a tragedy.
But not an actual issue?
Migrant crime is much less of an issue than U.S. citizen committed crime.
Not an actual issue? Those are your words. Her death, not an actual issue. I just want to get, no, you say.
Of course it's an issue. It's a tragedy.
So what do you mean by your
murder is an
post?
issue.
It's not an actual issue, meaning we shouldn't be paying attention to it. Senate's wasting its time this week on the Laken Riley Act that would address the circumstances of her murder. What's your advice to us? We just discontinue those proceedings now?
I think the Laken Riley Act could do a lot of harm. It would allow me to say, oh, this person shoplifted, and that would be enough probable cause to get somebody deported.
Interesting. You're here, who invited you to this committee hearing today, Mr. Isaacson?
The minority party.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're here as a spokesman for the minority party. I just want to make sure the record's clear on this. The spokesman for the minority party is advising the Senate that the Laken Riley Act is a bad idea and we ought to stop it. The spokesman for the minority party is saying that Laken Riley's death and migrant crime is not an actual issue. I can't frankly believe that I am hearing these words. You said it's not an actual issue. I read you the quote.
Laken Riley's death was not an actual issue.
You said that the murder of a nursing student in Georgia has a lot of people on the right talking about migrant crime. You put it in quotation marks, square quotes, like it's an actual issue. She's dead because of migrant crime, right?
We'll be watching what happens in the U.S. Senate. I'm going to guess that the U.S. senators from Illinois, Tammy Duckworth and Dick Durbin, will oppose this measure. And you've got to also think about other migrant crime that's allegedly happened not too long ago in Springfield. A young woman was murdered, and ultimately police were looking for an individual here as a member of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA. They're still searching for that suspect. It's believed that suspect fled to Mexico. So clearly a lot of concern here about migrant crime and the issue of due process, showing a double standard when it comes to the Laken Riley Act versus Karina's Law. We'll be watching closely here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Donald Trump's going to be inaugurated January 20th, and that's going to bring a whole host of changes. One thing that could be brought about with a Republican-controlled Congress is concealed carry reciprocity. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for hanging out with us all throughout the week, still remote, and looking forward to getting back into the home studio soon. Appreciate all the good wishes coming my way, so keep those coming. All right, let's get into this. Reciprocity, what is it? Well, it's been floated and filed in Congress. We'll see how far this goes, especially with Trump taking office January 20th, and what that means for a state like Illinois. I connected with Kirk Evans from U.S. Law Shield, and we talked a bit about reciprocity and what exactly is reciprocity.
Sure. So the general concept of national reciprocity is very similar to a driver's license reciprocity. If you have a license or a permit to carry in one state, all other states will be required to recognize that permit. Now, there's been a bill proposed in the House already, but as of this morning, I have not seen a Senate version. So the ins and outs and the details, this may look vastly different if it does get down the road, but the general concept is if you got a concealed carry permit in, say, Virginia, then Illinois is going to be required to recognize that permit.
Now, Illinois has some of the most strict firearms regulations. We have the firearm owner ID card you have to have in order to purchase and own firearms and ammunition. But if you want to carry a firearm concealed, you have to get a concealed carry license, and there's a lot of regulations to get that license. We do not have open carry in Illinois, despite that being challenged in state court with a case that we talked about earlier this week. Go check out that video with Illinois in Focus. But when it comes to reciprocity and how it could impact Illinois, Evans, he lays out what his thoughts are on, is Illinois going to be kicking and screaming?
Sure. There's certainly going to be a lot of folks kicking and screaming. So when you're not familiar with, the gun folks, the gun community, almost all of these new laws just sound terrible, right? When permitless carry passed in several states, the anti-gun crowd was just screaming, "There's going to be blood in the streets," and frankly, there was no discernible uptick or increase in shootings due to that. Same thing with we've had campus carry and open carry all around the country, and really, there's been no discernible change. So yes, there'll be some kicking and screaming, but the better news for Illinois is while you have to recognize that permit, you can still regulate the how, where, and why of carrying, right? So if you want to prohibit firearms in particular locations in Illinois, the person coming over from Virginia with their Virginia permit still going to have to abide by that. If you're going to have certain types of weapons that are prohibited in Illinois, the folks from Virginia or from the other state are going to still have to abide by that. So the laws on the how and why of carrying and where are frankly not going to change that much in Illinois. It's just folks from out of state, you're going to have to allow them to carry there as well.
Now, in Illinois, concealed carry is prohibited on public transit. That law is being challenged in federal courts with a district federal judge siding with gun rights advocates in that particular case. And that case is now in front of an appeals court. But Kirk Evans with U.S. Law Shield, he talked about how it's important people fully understand the laws of states that they're going into, because even with concealed carry reciprocity, there may be a carve out for upholding certain elements of various state laws, like secure places or sensitive places, including the likes of public transportation in the state of Illinois.
Oh, and that makes it even much more difficult, right? So in Illinois, there's an extensive training class that you do have to take to get your permit. So you do get some education on the laws. The tough part is some of these other states like Pennsylvania, Vermont have almost no training requirement whatsoever. And so you don't know the ins and outs of where you can carry, how you can carry, and things like that. But back to Illinois. So the difficult part is a number of these provisions have been challenged based upon the Supreme Court's ruling 2 to 3 years ago in a New York case. They've been challenged on constitutional grounds. And so we've seen injunctions, we've seen things get overturned by the Court of Appeals, then come back down, go up to the Court of Appeals. And so you don't know. So, as you're sitting here today, you're like, well, I think I remember something about public transportation, but it was illegal one time, and maybe it's not. That part is extraordinarily difficult when you've got these ongoing legal battles to figure out what the status is at any given second.
Now, this is not an advertisement for U.S. Law Shield, but U.S. Law Shield's Kirk Evans talks about how exactly they can assist in these types of questions people may have, especially when it comes to the potential for reciprocity happening in the United States.
Sure. So there's two parts to it, and I'll bring up the second one first based upon your question. So for a small monthly fee, we are a legal defense for self-defense program. One of the components of that is for no added charge, you can call in any time of the day during business hours and ask to speak with the program attorney in your state, here, Illinois, and they can walk you through the ins and outs of any of these issues you may have. So if you saw on the news that a judge issued an injunction on the public transport issue, and you want to take the L next week, but you're worried about having your gun, you can call in at no additional charge, ask to speak to that attorney in your state, and they can walk you through the ins and outs of taking your gun on the L or not doing that. And then the other part of our program is if you're involved in a self-defense incident, we will provide you a program attorney start to finish from the second it happens all the way through trial or any appeals or any retrials at no additional cost to you.
Earlier this week, I also connected with Maxon Shooters Supplies, Dan Eldridge, the owner of that company, and also a member of Federal Firearms Licensees of Illinois. He said he's excited about the potential for national reciprocity under a Trump administration and Republican-controlled Congress.
Oh, well, of course it will. Illinois recognizes, or Illinois will issue an Illinois concealed carry to residents of, I think it's 3 or 4 other states. They're extremely stingy with those, and it's all around I believe it's the mental health checks or some nonsense. So if indeed there is national reciprocity, I think there would be a boom in gun tourism for New York City and Chicago. People that otherwise wouldn't come here will. I would enjoy going to New York City. I wouldn't enjoy going to New York City, but I would consider going to New York City if I could carry a firearm. Reciprocity has always been one of the best reasons to get a concealed carry license, even if your state permits constitutional carry, because it does typically cross state borders. So I'm all for it. Why should driver's licenses be in force in all 50 states, and concealed carry, which is a constitutionally protected activity, is not?
So that's another measure we'll be watching closely here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Clearly, it'll have impacts on the state and gun owners coming in from other states and wanting to carry their firearms for self-protection as the Second Amendment allows. So how is it going to impact Illinois? We'll be watching. Here with Illinois in Focus Daily, I'm Greg Bishop. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and join us each and every weekday morning here for Illinois in Focus Daily. All right, that's all I got for you guys today. Not going to have a program Monday. It's MLK Day, so we're going to be observing that, but hope to be back at the home studio on Tuesday. Appreciate all of the positive messages you guys have been sending my way. We'll definitely be back at it on Tuesday for another edition of Illinois in Focus Daily, right here with America's Talking Network. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, get the headlines in your inbox at thecentersquare.com, and find the podcast where you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus Daily.